All right, we are live. We are back. I am back having after a 1 week hiatus. I am now in the sun. I don't even know what mountains this is behind me, but yeah, we are all a bit of a holiday special, I would say, for DCA Live today. Unfortunately, we haven't had the Santa rally, or at least it stopped short of Christmas Day. Bitcoin is having its worst week since the election. Really, we've kind of headed back down to 93k, but we're going to chat through it all today. We've got a large agenda across a range of different items. First, let's just check in with the gang. How are you guys all doing? James, how are you liking the market here?
It's, this is well, seasonality historically. Sometimes the Christmas week always sucks. Very low volume, very low liquidity, perfect for market makers to hunt, leverage longs, and also sometimes some tax loss selling can happen. So losers get sold out, or if people are underwater in position, there can be a little bit of that. That happens this week. Just normal historic stuff. But in perspective, we are back at levels not seen since Friday on Bitcoin. In fact, we're higher than we were last Friday. And weird things are happening. Certain things are strong, certain things are weak. Chinese stocks are up, Tesla's up, Bitcoin's down hard, MicroStrategy down hard, miners are down. We'll unpack all of that. It's been a weird cycle, but it's been an amazing year. So nothing goes up forever. But the question is, where do we go from here? Hope we can answer that this show.
Exactly. You need a little bit of perspective. Obviously, we're talking about a bad week with Bitcoin at 93k. It's pretty funny having thought about that a few months ago, but yeah, it does feel a little bit shaky to end the year. CTO, how are you feeling about the market here?
Yeah, I mean, it's always like this, that the moment you feel that you have everything figured out, you finally, it's crystal clear, Bitcoin is above 100k, the 5 digits is behind us and so on. That's when the market will humble you and yeah, surprise you a little bit. So I didn't really see this dump coming here. But yeah, that's the markets. We just have to grind on, try to analyze the situation from here, and yeah, get on with it.
I agree. Yeah, I didn't really see this. I mean, I thought that we had until the inauguration. That's what I think. And then I thought there was enough FUD, whether warranted or not, around certain bits about the market. And I just kind of felt like we would chop around then, which I think was a little bit consensus. And then we've kind of had a bit of a freak out with the Fed this week. What about you, Marty? How are you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I mean, I know everyone's a little bit perturbed, but I mean, I predicted this on 27th of November. If you look at that post, we all knew. I mean, I knew it was going to run up to probably 105 to 108. I mean, 108 was actually higher than I thought. 105, I thought, and then pulled back $20,000. I thought 88888, which was the previous high. Crypto will always run up, make a new high, then come down and test the previous range high. And so just on schedule, it did it perfect time, like James says, during Christmas, low volume, market makers, particularly in this case, Binance, did their thing, and they continue to do their thing, chipping away at the longs. Just remember, all that Trump victory bullishness just creates more and more leverage in the system. And, the exchanges don't carry leverage. They'll come down and hunt it whenever they can, which controls the market. And just absolutely like an orchestra, that's what happened. I think Solana got hit the hardest. Solana has a number of things going on for it. It came back almost exactly to the previous high and then was pulled down even further to 177 by Jupiter, I think, to liquidate the low leverage 5x positions. In a last dance, and we're sitting at 182 today. But the entire Trump pump was reversed, pretty much, except for Bitcoin, which I think is not done yet. I think Bitcoin will go and touch that previous high as well, probably in the 90,800 to 88 range. So hopefully everybody took advantage of the Trump pump, took some profits, some lifestyle profits, accumulated some more tokens, and didn't make any stupid mistakes. But, pay attention to my posts, people. I said there was a 25 to 35% chance of this pullback, and it happened. So, the nice thing is if you were waiting for that, you get nicer, juicier entries. Anybody entering now or buying spot now is substantially lower than they would have been if they were buying, 30% higher. Everybody was trying to buy, just under 100. If you buy now, it's almost a $10,000 discount. So, to those that are patient, always get the rewards. That's the expression. And like CTO just said, the market will always sober us up. And there we go. Once again, it did. I was actually sitting here doing my spaces on last Christmas. Feels exactly the same. Same movements, just a slow chopping downwards, eating away at the longs. So there we are. I'm not that surprised. I think once we test the previous highs, which we're doing now, they should reject, leading to the Trump inauguration. And then, we'll go and set new range highs, which is where the fun will really start. We've got some idea where they'll be from the Trump pump, but I think they'll be substantially higher. So there we go. That's my perspective.
Yeah,
I think the Jerome Powell thing, hopefully we talk about it. I think Jerome Powell's speech was a particularly manipulative, hawkish speech, which really triggered a macro sell-off and a lack of confidence in the U.S. markets in a very poor display from Jerome Powell. I was very vocal about it. I thought it was highly manipulative and political. And I think that started the downfall on the FOMC, the meeting. When the numbers and the metrics were all pretty good, he came in with just an awful speech. But anyway, hopefully we'll talk about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, we are. We're going to go through the agenda. So as you said, Bitcoin dropped below 100K. We're now sitting at 93K. That was primarily due to the Fed. We saw multiple assets. This was really a macro sell-off. Multiple assets break their uptrend, including gold, stocks. You saw the dollar move higher. You saw a bunch of EM currencies moved, and even developed nation countries like the yen moved to very weakish moves across the board. We'll ask, where are we in the cycle? Is it time to freak out? We hit 100K. Now we're below. Is there room to worry here? Bitcoin miners now following the Saylor strategy. MicroStrategy joined the NASDAQ today. Obviously, their strategy of levered buying Bitcoin or continuing to build a Bitcoin reserve. We're now starting to see that from a number of different miners. Bitcoin dominance was at 54% at one stage just a couple of weeks ago, moved back up to 59%, and it's now trying to find a footing. It's moved a little bit lower today, but we'll take a view on that. Solana. We obviously have a lot of worries about why it's been underperforming. One of those main things has been around the unlock, which we flagged for months at this stage. That was coming in Q1. That's around 2% of the supply. At the same time, you have the FTX repayments, which are looking to be the end of Q1, which is going to be the bigger factor there. We'll take a look at Sol, ETH versus Sui. Hype is this new Arbitrum, essentially L3 almost, which is a perp dex, which a lot of people are trying to call a Solana killer. We'll unpack that a little bit. Memecoins down 60 billion in 2 weeks. A lot of pain there. That's about half of the market cap of all meme coins are raised. Is AI going to save us here? There's a lot of news around that this week, and then we'll finally move on to Tesla. But let's start with Bitcoin. Obviously, Bitcoin went above 100K. We touched around 108K. It wobbled there for a little bit. Bitcoin dominance was going higher. And then we saw it really fall out of bed after what was said at the Fed. Maybe CTO, let's bring up the Bitcoin chart just to get a better sense of where we are. You're muted, by the way.
Sorry about that. Yeah, so I agree with what Marty said before. The support here is really 90,800. Because that was the breakout level from this consolidation in mid-November. And that's where I would expect some support. If this breaks down also here, a little bit concerning. The thing is that you can never know that it is the top at the top. That it just isn't possible. So the objective, I don't think so. I don't think it is. I haven't made any sell-offs here or anything. So I don't think it's the top, but I try to keep an open mind at all times because one day the local top will be in. And that day it will also not feel like it's going to happen. So I would try to be observant and monitor, see if the support breaks and we start heading down here. Okay, then it's a little bit more concerning. But I still think that it's a shakeout and that it will come back here at some point. But I also think that at the inauguration, because I agree with what you said, Mando, I also thought that the dream will stay alive a little bit longer. Then when reality hits, when the Trump inauguration comes, even if it does good things, perhaps it won't be as fantastic as everyone dreamed. Maybe the Bitcoin reserve won't be coming in trillions on day one, you know, and then there will be some disappointment. The reality is always worse than the dream. So then I thought, okay, after inauguration, there's some disappointments, there's some sell-offs. The question is if that is being front run a little bit. That could be the case here.
That was my view, and like I said, September was the time to get long, and I said towards the end of this year I was going to move into more defensive stuff. But I thought I had until the first week of Jan. Genuinely, I thought the first week of Jan is when, you know, for tax season as well, like people have generally upped this year. You thought they would monetize it maybe the start of next year rather than this year. And I just felt as though we had a little bit longer. I'd started to see the foothills of worries about, you know, whether it's FUD or not around like MicroStrategy. And I just felt as though there was just coming together for like, okay, we could see a little bit of a sell-off around the inauguration, because unless he was going to do a day one executive order for a Bitcoin strategic reserve, like there was a lot riding on that, and I just felt like that would happen. This caught me off guard. I mean, luckily I wasn't completely caught off guard. I did move kind of a large amount into JLP, but I didn't move enough, particularly for my like Memecoin portfolio, which is really taking a hammering. But a lot of my majors I kind of saved with that move. But it does feel here like that 90, is it? So you would say that the real support there is 90.8. Yeah, like we kind of hit that a couple of times, or at least once, and then I didn't know if it was like 92K really first. If we were to break that level, what would be the next level of support, you think?
I mean, in my opinion, there's one level on the daily at 9184. The next level would be significantly lower, probably the 200 moving average.
The next level where there was any price action at all is basically down at 73.
Yeah, that's the 200 moving average.
Yeah.
So that would be a pretty that's why I think this level of support is actually quite key because of how aggressively we moved higher. I do think some people will be wary of it. I'd be very unsurprised if we tested that a couple of times here, just because it's such a key level of support. So if you're watching this, be very, very much prepared to have, I think, to face those sort of days. Like we had a few levered wipeouts, but I'd be very unsurprised if we try and attack those. If I was a short, I'd be looking to attack those sort of levels. So I think expect them. I expect what you want to do on those sort of days as well.
And if I can just add one thing, I think that this is pretty obvious. So a lot of people with, maybe they put it here at, like you said, 92 or here at 90,800. Both Martin and I said the same thing. So I think a lot of people will have their stops there. That means that if it gets hunted, they will drive price a little below to try to liquidate everyone with kind of the obvious support as their stop loss or liquidation. Yeah.
So maybe let's go into what actually caused this, because it was, I mean, we didn't hit those all-time highs. We did hit those all-time highs, but then everything else hadn't been trading that well. Like Bitcoin dominance was going higher during that period. You saw Solana in particular break its correlation with Bitcoin and kind of head back towards 200 just before this all happened. And then that Fed press conference, initially, obviously they cut rates, but it was a pretty hawkish conference, basically pointing to the idea there was not going to be rate cuts next year, or at least a much slowed down rate cut cycle, pointing to the idea that Trump may lead to inflation with some of the tariffs coming in, which I thought he wouldn't be as political with a view like that, but very, very interesting to see that he came out with that straight away. And what we saw is kind of across the board. Like if you were like more of a macro trader, you'd have seen that gold broke its support trend line. Stocks did. Bond yields went higher. Dollar went higher. It was a real macro move. Marty, you had some thoughts about this before we just at the start of the show. Like, what was your take on that Fed meeting?
I've been watching Jerome Powell now his entire term, and I've become very familiar with being able to interpret his words. He doesn't say things directly. We know it's hawkish or dovish. It's the tone of the way he says things, and I think that this time around there was a very, very hawkish Jerome Powell from the beginning. He even he went off script several times. In fact, looking at the camera, making bullet point statements off the cuff, which he doesn't normally do. In one particular moment, he even said, "We are not allowed to hold Bitcoin," without even being asked, which obviously anybody in the world is going to interpret as the US government is not allowed to hold Bitcoin. Clearly, that's a political move, knowing the reserve strategy is in play, knowing that there's 3 weeks to inauguration. It just felt very partisan. It felt like the first time Jerome Powell picked a side. And I think all that does is just take away a sense of trust in the US leadership at that level. He was sort of the last bastion of hope of a bipartisan financial leader. I think everyone now knows that Jerome Powell is playing ball with the outgoing administration. The numbers were not that bad. Unemployment was down. They lowered rates. The rest of the world was lowering rates. Everyone looked like sort of a soft landing was at play. And then he came out with this ridiculous tone. And from that moment on, markets started tumbling. It started with gold, the SPY, the futures, Bitcoin, and I think the cascade began. So I think Jerome Powell single-handedly is the most powerful man in the world financially. His words can change markets around the world, and he put it on display. He did that. He did the ultimate death blow, which was, even though the numbers are better, I'm telling you things are going to get worse. And people go, well, what? So it's all manipulated then, Jerome. You've just told us
on Friday.
Right.
On the Friday, we did actually get some data just after his speech, which was PCE inflation, which came actually below expectations. It came.
Below.
So you're right in saying that. This was very much preemptive, I would say, from Jerome Powell. Whether that's political or not, I was surprised for him to be as preemptive as he was. I think most people thought this would be kind of a cut in rates, which is what happened, but then a largely benign sort of press conference, be like a wait and see sort of approach. But he was pretty aggressive. James, what did you make of it? You follow a lot of different markets.
Yeah. So I think it's extremely political, even though they're not supposed to be. Obviously, in order for the incoming president to control inflation, rates need to come down, and there's some type of behind the scenes fighting between the new president, Trump, and of course Jerome Powell. He's got to be independent. But I think it goes deeper than that, because Jerome Powell spoke of getting to this magical unicorn 2% for years and years and years. He failed to do that. So there's a great chart from Balaji on Twitter, if anybody can pull it up. It looks at Campbell's soup and food inflation, rent inflation, you name it, everything. It's not controllable by the Fed. The only thing the Fed can do is destroy demand. And there's another thing behind the scenes that he is aware of. If I am acutely aware of the job market disaster that's there, he must be. I mean, just this weekend alone, we had 2 massive stores. I mean, thousands and thousands of huge, I don't know what they are, 5,000 square meter stores hitting the wall. A company called Big Lots and a company called Marty Party, not you, but it's a company that makes or sells stuff for parties. Both went out of business, and both are fixtures in every single mall across the United States. And the amount of workers from those 2 firms alone that are lost right before Christmas holiday is extreme. And forget about all the AI disruption in software houses and everything else. The job market is catastrophic. And Jerome will not let you know that. If food inflation and other inflation is not licked, he'll never get to 2%, especially with this type of money printing that's happening. So I think he's just upset that he failed. And he's worried about 2025, and he's worried about the future fights with the incoming administration. My take.
I think he's fired. I personally think he's fired from that speech.
You can't
I
fire
think
him,
he
though.
went-
That's the problem.
I think he went against Trump. I don't think that's what Trump would have wanted him to say. So
I think it's a pretty open fight. Like the talk was that this was below the surface. Like Trump said he would fire him before that. They kind of fought in their first presidency as well, right? Jerome Powell was brought in because the Fed chair before him was essentially fired. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this relationship develops. But I think it could be a very contentious one if Jerome Powell is going to be as forward looking as he seemingly is. Now, some of the other Fed chairs had pointed to that beforehand, but he hadn't. But let's see how that one develops. But yeah, this is kind of something I think you should pay attention to with crypto, because for a while, right, since the election, we'd really been rallying off Trump. We'd really been rallying off the concept that we were going to get Bitcoin policy, we were going to get maybe broader crypto policy, a Bitcoin reserve, that this was going to be an incredibly positive crypto administration. But at the same time, the dollar had been getting stronger. You'd seen M2 money supply dip lower. We've been rallying in the face of things that would normally make crypto sell off, I would say. Those two things, if you were to say, like, we would normally be selling off, but we were really rallying. And there was a lot of, people pointing to crypto and being like, wow, it's got so much strength despite the strong dollar, despite M2 going lower. And I think what we really just saw with that one press conference was crypto return. Macro basically said, hey, you got to start paying attention to us again. You can't just rally without us. I think we'd all been rallying off the idea of, we're going to get Bitcoin strategic reserve on day one. And then suddenly it was I think, swiped away from everyone. And that's, I think in a bull cycle, that tells you how close it can be. Even if I said, I thought it could happen in a couple of weeks, that 2 weeks can be a 30-40% move in altcoins. It can really be very, very aggressive when that gets swiped away from you. CTO, do you have any thoughts of this at all?
No, I agree. I agree with what you just said. I think that's exactly the psychology, because we talked about it here, that for the longest time, the yields and the US dollar index has been very helpful for analyzing the Bitcoin price. It hasn't worked always, but many times it's kind of given a clue when yields, change market structure or something. It has been helpful because usually Bitcoin and other assets followed along. And for the longest time, it has been completely disconnected now for the past couple of months. But yeah, because these charts have become very, very strong. It's easier on the weekly. Like looking at the US dollar index, it was in this range since 2022. Suddenly it broke out. Massively strong US dollar index chart. Dollar is really back. The narrative that Trump has been talking about is working. It's working on the market. We haven't seen this strength since 2022.
Since the last bear market, right? Normally it's a very bearish signal to have a very strong dollar like that.
Yeah. And looking at the yields as well, they may be even stronger on the 10-year here. This broken out. It was on the way down. Everyone, me included, thought that this has kind of broken down here and we're going to get yields moving down in this territory. It didn't. Yields are back and they're very strong charts here. Yields are climbing up again. So, and usually those two things are not so good for things like Bitcoin. While for the past couple of months, it hasn't mattered. Now it seems like it matters again, because it was really after the press conference with Powell that the mood changed here. So I agree. I think that's a very good analysis.
I think it's important to note as well that, when I posted about Jerome Powell, everybody was in the comments was going, oh, the president can't fire Jerome Powell. That is not true. Let's be very clear. If you read the Constitution, the legal authorities in Section 10 of the Federal Reserve Act, it states clearly members of the Board of Governors, including the chair, can be removed for cause by the president. Removed for cause by the president. And that term for cause is not explicitly defined in the Act, but historically it's interpreted as a serious misconduct, malfeasance, neglect of duty, disagreement of a policy, etc. I believe that speech is either illustrated cause or is the cause. Jerome Powell has been fired. I've said it today.
Do you think him having a view on future inflation is enough to fight like malfeasance? I think he's still like he would have to do something really terrible for that to be enacted. That's my interpretation of that. I think he's going to fight with Trump a lot, but I think it will be a big deal if Trump fires him. Like I think it would be a very big deal.
I don't believe any of the numbers he's reported, and I don't believe anything he's ever said has been reality. I think everything he said has been the opposite. It started with inflation is transitory. Everything's been a lie ever since. Tell me one thing he said that's not a lie.
Yeah, obviously. I mean, you can point to some good things. Obviously, he did bring inflation down, but obviously he wrecked some of the markets, particularly the crypto markets, in the process. Obviously, he hasn't explicitly been against crypto, but he's definitely not been pro crypto and some of the stuff that he said, which I think has annoyed a number of different people. But I think up until a few weeks ago, a few months ago, people were pointing to the idea he's been one of the few Fed chairs to actually enact a soft landing. Right? Like no Fed chair has been able to do that before. And what I think is that was people were really complimentary of Jerome Powell just a couple of months ago.
I mean,
this seems like a pretty
right.
This seems like a pretty political thing to have done, which is which I think is not necessarily what he should have done.
That's correct. That's the point I'm making. I think it was a political speech. Also, I was watching the futures, the NASDAQ futures during the speech. You know, if you watch the futures on a 1 second or a 30-second chart, you can really gauge the sentiment based on his words. And he said at one point, it will take years to recover the lost growth. When he said that, the word years, that's triggered the sell-off. When people heard that it will take years, which basically was him saying, we have been in recession, admitting it for the first time. We have actually been in recession, even though him, Yellen, Biden, everyone has told us time and time again, we're not in recession. I think Jerome Powell showed his cards. It's all been a lie. That speech was the tipping point, and he's out. There you go.
He's definitely,
he's out, and he's out.
I think being the Fed chair, obviously the markets decide how much they like you. They liked him a couple of months ago, and they didn't like him after that speech. We'll see how he does over the next few months. You know, like maybe next speech he walks it all back. We also don't know, like the reason why he was hawkish was he was predicting inflation under Trump. He basically pointed to the idea, maybe not as explicitly, but he was basically saying these tariffs are going to cause inflation. And we don't know. At the moment, they're the threat of tariffs. And Trump has a very good way of threatening tariffs and getting a deal done, right? That's one thing that he did manage to get done during his presidency. So who knows? Like maybe in the first few months, we get a deal. He gets, deals with the UK, with the EU, with Canada, with China. Like that happened last time. So that's why I thought it was quite presumptuous, because you don't actually know you're going to get those big tariffs until they actually happen. But that's kind of where we're at. I did think that was it's going to be an interesting one to see how that plays out. I think the other thing to look at here is kind of Bitcoin dominance as well, because that will probably give us a better sense of what was going on beforehand, which is that Bitcoin was outperforming while the rest of the market headed south. Over the last couple of sessions, we've started to see that turn around a little bit. That was a long-term bull trend, right? Bitcoin dominance went from in the 40s all the way up to 63% or 62%. It then went down to 54, back up to 59, and now it's kind of retested that trend level support. Can we bring that up, CTO, the Bitcoin dominance chart? I think it'd be very interesting to look at.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a sort of an old season fake out. It was sort of an old season fake out. Yeah.
Exactly. It really felt that this trend line broke because it's been so stable for the longest time, basically the whole of 2023 and then the whole of 2024. And then suddenly it breaks. And everyone was excited. I was excited. I felt that, okay, this could be the start of a massive rally in altcoins because Bitcoin has moved up to higher level and so on. And I mean, they did rally. There was a lot of moves in a lot of altcoins. But look now, it's back exactly to the trend line, as if nothing has happened. as if nothing has happened. It's back exactly.
Is that
Faked in
resistance
both
though
directions.
now? Is that
Yeah.
resistance?
I mean, if this was a traded chart, it would be resistance here. But
Yep.
I've thought about this before. It's not really traded, so I don't think it's that precise. I don't think we can say it's resistance. It's more that the trend is back.
And Mando, you nailed it as well when you said 60 billion in memes was lost. That's reflected here. You know,
It's not just this. Bring up your favorite Dino alt from the which rallied over that 3-week period. Like altcoin
TRX.
seasons, they last for such a short period. But like bring up ADA, for example. I mean, XRP has managed to hold on, which I think has surprised a few different people. But I think obviously there's still quite a lot of going on with XRP, maybe potentially with the ETF, with the new stable coin, but a lot of the ones that just rallied because you were seeing a broad-based rally in altcoins, like of which there are a ton, they do look very precarious here. They look very precarious here.
They look really bad. Also, almost all of them have these kind of head and shoulders top formations, which isn't great, even on the BTC chart.
You can run through the top losers on the week. I mean, on the top 20, the top losers. Let's go through them. Avalanche lost 27%. Chainlink lost 26%. Polkadot lost 23%. So you're 100% right. Cardano lost 20%, which is actually pretty good. Dogecoin lost 24%, which is quite a hit as well. Solana lost 16.6%, and XRP lost 12.43%.
And also many of them actually changed in market structure, because many of them had the charts something like this. I just took one by random here, but most of them look like this. They had like breakouts. They had breakouts from key levels.
Multi-month breakouts, right? Like
exactly. Like half a year break from when was this? It was like in June. And there's like you cannot bring up almost any of them. They look kind of the same. So it was like a market structure change, which has reverted. So it's been brutal for many altcoins. And I guess we will talk about Solana separately, but Solana has looked different for most of the altcoins for the whole of 2024. And I guess we will come to that later on.
Well, let's touch upon it now, because I think Solana had been underperforming before a lot of the other coins, right? It underperformed from about a month ago, right? It was starting to underperform, and then as Marty said at the start of the show, we basically erased the whole of the Trump trade in a few wicks, right? Now, I'm looking at this and I'm very bullish, because I think a lot of it was telegraphed, like you said, with the unlocks. I don't think the unlocks are that bad. James, what's your view on all this? Like 2% unlock, like, are you really worried about that versus all the unlocks of the other L1s that just pumped? Like, it seems crazy to me.
Yeah, 2% is nothing. But I think what was interesting with the rally and the Dino coins that do nothing, and it's clear from data, it opened up kind of the grave dancers universe to jump on Solana's grave with, in combination, the Jupe liquidity hunting, the Binance liquidity hunting. It was just a perfect storm of trash. But, that unlock was something that people cling on to. It's like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. But, you're getting 8% staking reward. 2% unlock is nothing, especially compared to other assets out there. Now, the other interesting thing that I find is everything kind of happens for a reason. And there is always orchestration behind the scenes. Apparently, and Marty, correct me on this, the unlock is for the end of March, that 2% unlock that people are freaking out about, but that will be well absorbed in daily volume pretty much. But the other issue is the FTX payback is also scheduled for the same time, which is far larger than the size of the unlock. Yeah. So
there's a bit of unlock, I think, in Jan, a bit of unlock in Feb, and maybe a bit in March as well. There's 3 different ones. And remember, this is the same unlock of the FTX estate that was sold to these hedge funds. What was it, a year ago? And if you remember at that time, everyone was like, Sol was underperforming because of that auction, and that you would see people look to hedge it because it was clearing at like 90 or 100 when Sol was trading at 130. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say that everyone was hedging their Solana position then, and then now we have this unlock, right? Like what I think has happened here is a lot of it was hedged either throughout the year or during that period. And I personally think this is going to be a bullish unlock. 2%, to put in perspective, Solana already has about 6 to 7% inflation a year. Like 2%, yeah, it's not tiny, but it's also not massive. And if you're comparing that to XRP that just did a 5x and unlocks a gargantuan amount same with all these other dino alts, yeah. right? Like it's really not that bad. So I look at this and go like, I think that's a massive. I think Solana's gonna be a great Q1 trade now. It's had its underperformance. It underperformed all the other coins a few weeks beforehand, which means it's now nice and bottomed out. And I really like Solana here into Q1 more than I even like Bitcoin. Like I really like it here.
And the data, the fundamentals behind it are like nothing I've ever seen before or imagined. 2/3 of all transactions for all of crypto happen on one chain. 2/3. You can't make that stuff up. You know, it's nuts.
I think from a technical, I actually bought some Solana last week as well, or a couple of days ago. So I agree with you here, Mando. I mean, it is a little bit, but it smells a little bit like a fake, because I had the support here at 0.002, and technically it has broken, price is below, but so it did in February and early March. Then it quickly reverted. It seemed like a fake at that time. Then after that, it has been exactly perfect. Now it's a little bit below again at similar level like it was in February, March. This is on the sold to BTC chart, and same on the sold to USD chart. The obvious support was here, like the highs of the previous local tops. Then it broke out, and now it's just below that. But it's sitting there. It's not crashing down. So is it like a fake? Slightly below. I mean, Marty always talking about Wyckoff. I have to think about that the other side is always trying to trick you. And yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, could be that it has actually broken the support, but smells like a fake.
I think we could have a little bit more of a freak out around these unlocks, but I just feel like if I'm looking at a 3-month time horizon here, I personally really like it. I just think it's a good view. Do you have any thoughts on this, Marty?
Yeah, I mean the FTX repayment is now officially January 6th and 60 days after that, correct? So James is correct. It lines up almost exactly with the unlock schedule. I think that the big driver was Sol BTC was just so high, it hadn't really pulled back. It needed to pull back. It pulled back and barely anything, back to 0.0019. So I think that's over with. We needed to get it over with. They took advantage of a low volume situation. They took advantage of Jerome Powell, the macro pullback. I just agree with James. Everything you just said. I think that's who we are. Now, on the daily, the RSI is oversold. The last time it was oversold was July 2023. So technically, this is when you're long, this is when you buy. I think ignore the noise. Look at the roadmap. Look at what's coming for Solana. Understand that 2.2 out of 3, almost more than 2/3 of transactions are on Solana. They've got probably the biggest validator upgrade in the history of blockchain coming out. It's extremely well tested and well thought out. They've got 0.0 now launching, which people aren't ready for. Nobody's even aware that the blockchain as we know it right now operates over the public internet, which is the most poorly architected network there is. There's no routing strategy at all in the public internet. And so, in order to break through the threshold of 50,000 TPS, Solana's already started a project called 0.0 to create a private network for layer 1 blockchains in order to get to 1 million TPS. They're so far ahead. I just don't think the price reflects that. The other things to understand is the competitors to Solana mostly have their own exchanges, and so there's a lot of conflict of interest. We don't talk about it. Base is very much an Ethereum shop, and Coinbase is the largest exchange, so they have a lot of control over the price of Solana and over Ethereum for that matter. And then Binance, obviously, with their BNB, they're not very happy when their dominance drops below 3%, and with a push of a button, They're the number one stake of Solana. They can control the price too. So there's a lot of macro at play as well. I think, like James said, there's just so many factors involved. Solana needed to pull back, and they did it now. Thankfully, they did it now, and they didn't do it later. But I think it's by far the most bullish entry right now for Solana over the last 6 months. This is probably the best entry.
Did you guys pick up on something else as well? It's I've been monitoring. If you look at the new incoming administration, and you look at the, how do I say, people hanging out at Mar-a-Lago, you got Mark Andreessen basically living there. You got Elon Musk, former PayPal mafia, David Sachs, crypto czar. You got Chamath sharing papers about Solana and how he needs to brush up on his crypto skills. I mean, you put all this together, the creme de la creme of Silicon Valley VCs are now not only advising the future president, but also looking hard at different blockchain solutions. And of course, Mark Andreessen with A16Z is heavily invested in many of the Solana ecosystem things. So have you guys picked up on that, or is it just me?
No, absolutely. There's a massive Solana underflow going on in that administration, starting with David Sachs and Chamath. Obviously, we know that. It's the only truly open source, decentralized piece of software, in my opinion. Everything else is compromised. So if they're going to pin their hats on decentralized money, Bitcoin can't be money. It's a store of value. Ethereum can't be money. It's too slow. The only one that really can be money is Solana. And I think it's going to take the role of retail money and stablecoin. Stablecoin or Solana, or one of the two. But I think that's the rail of the future. I think also one point needs to be made. The meme coin, 2024 was the meme coin year. And I think a lot of meme coin people came onto Solana to make the meme coin money, sold their meme coins back into Solana, and they're not investors. They're traders. So they sold their Solana and they move on to the next shiny object. So the meme coin thing, to me, I've always said is a liveness test. It's not a true use case. These are not investors. They're not investing in meme coins. They're trying to make a quick, easy buck. And, they did. It's been extremely successful. But I think the more important part of meme coins is where they tested the network. They tested adoption. They tested volume, scale, throughput, to the point of breaking the internet, finding the next bottleneck, and they served their purpose. And I think that meme coin traders exit. They're not investors in the underlying infrastructure. They don't really care about technology. They're just there for the quick buck. So I think that's a lot as well. You can see a lot of large meme coin people. We looked on chain and we saw they all dumped a lot of Solana on the way down. They're not holding Solana. So be aware, meme coin it's a sharp sword. It comes with its ups for a network, but it also will come with the downs. Meme coin traders typically are not there for the investment in the infrastructure. They're there for the quick money. And I think that's what we saw as well. So I'm putting that out there.
Yeah, I would agree that a large bit of Solana's use case so far has been hyper gambling, let's say. So whenever that gets questioned, although I don't think that's going to go, I do think that in periods of where that moves, I mean, a lot of this moves to different chains. We'll go into what happened with hype in the future, but yeah, it did feel as though there was a little bit of questioning about Solana meme coins in general, and that led to a bit of an outflow for sure. Pain kind of across meme coins, but definitely Solana ones felt the weakest. I think this all just comes back though. I just think it's like peak FUD at the moment.
Oh yeah, it all comes back. It's faster than you realize. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting spot to be in.
Also,
one we've mentioned a few times.
Before we continue, just a little alpha. I know I'm very much in touch with a lot of sort of institutional Solana players. I'm not going to mention names, but they're all preparing for Fire Dancer and all want to accumulate stake. Remember, they need to accumulate between 10 and $30 million of Solana to run a validator. And so they're all very happy that the price pulled back because they can accumulate their stake at lower prices. So there's all these other aspects to it that people aren't aware of. And that's just another interesting thing. Chamath, David Sachs, all the ETFs, there's 5 Solana ETFs that will roll out probably right after the inauguration. Those gears will start turning. these people want to accumulate stakes. So I think the Solana holders are moving from retail to institutional, just like we saw Bitcoin and Ethereum. And this is part of the process. There you go. Carry on.
Just a quick thought experiment here. Like, what we've seen here is a bunch of, and this is maybe a bit more political, but you've seen a bunch of VC affiliated people come in and take fairly prominent positions in the US government. Do you think we are going to like them as much in 4 years' time? Do you think we're going to like David Sachs and Chamath and the VP and all these, like, there's a lot of VCs that are suddenly now our heroes, and they're now getting involved in government. James, what's your view? What's your view on all this? Like, I am bullish on them being more pro crypto, but do you not think this has also got the seeds of, like, just don't trust? I don't trust any of these guys at the same time.
Yeah, well, obviously, everybody has sometimes wants to support their own self-interest, but I honestly do believe this administration is quite special. A big part of the focus is to stop the grift, stop the debt, stop the crazy spending. And the other part of the focus is be pro-innovation, help use technology and AI to streamline a lot of things within the government. We saw that last week with the 1,500-page bill that was cut down to nothing, all because of a couple of tweets from one guy, and the ability to analyze these 1,500 pages in a matter of an hour or so using AI. And excise the most important thing. So the world, as I always say, the world is changing very fast. But at the same time as well, you're right, Manda, everybody at one day or another will fall out of favor. That's just the nature of the world. And then they'll fall back in favor. They'll fall out and fall back. It all really depends on what happens with the macro. I do expect a little bit of bumpiness early 2025. To make an omelet, you need to break a few eggs. And an omelet needs to be made. So eggs will be broken. There'll be a little bit of pain. And if you look at the Javier Milei playbook out of Argentina, the first year was very painful, but now it's better. So I expect something along those lines to happen as well in the United States. But it's nice for the first time ever not to have pure grifters driving or steering the direction of the government, but people that really understand innovation, AI, what's coming around the corner, because that's one thing that the VCs are good at, is knowing what's next. And the US government needs to be ready for that. And it even goes into things like warfare. I mean, what's the point in building an aircraft carrier these days? There's no point. There is absolutely no point. You need to build lots of little drones. And that's, little things like that need to be kind of modernized, the way of thinking.
Yeah, I just think we're going to see Trump maybe fall out with a few of these guys. Like, I imagine a few of them are going to be, like, self-interested and do bad stuff. Like, I can kind of just see how the next 4 years might happen with some of these guys. Though I do think it's, we're replacing a bunch of technocrats that basically just ingratiated themselves. Like how Elizabeth Warren is worth hundreds of millions, how all these random politicians are all worth tens, hundreds of millions. It's just kind of crazy to me. So it's been done anyway, but maybe it'll be good. But I'm not fully, like, trusting of any of these people, at least at this stage. Though it does feel like we're going to get a more pro crypto administration for sure, which I think is a good thing for everyone. The other final one I want to mention here was Sui. Like, Sui, how do we feel about that one versus Sol and ETH here? Because Sol, like I said, ETH has been holding up relatively well, actually, compared to other things. Didn't quite get to the 4K, over the 4K level, just kind of touched above it and then sank all the way back down. But what's the view on Sui here?
I can speak on Sui.
Yeah.
I think Sui has held up tremendously well. I thought it would drop under 4. It still hasn't. I think it's not over yet. But the lowest liquidation levels on Sui are just under 4. So clearly, pseudo finance and the large Sui exchanges are going to push that down and clear those levels. I think Zeus and Sui have been spectacular. Zeus has maintained over 70 cents even through this. I mean, it's one of the top performing coins right now. So I think Sui and Zeus, which have very similar market making, have continued that and maintained through this downfall. And I think Sui and Solana are being rebalanced. And if you look at the pair trading, you'll see that it's been very much a Sui over Sol run. Even Raoul Powell posted about that recently. But I think that's about to change. I think there'll be the move back from Sui into Solana. And, Sui is probably going to hover around 4, but I expect it probably to pull into the threes for a short period of time. But very, very spectacular roadmap. The deliverables are fantastic. Everyone on the team is amazing. They continue to push. Sui is definitely a formidable contender. Should definitely be higher than Cardano. And I think it will be.
Yeah.
It'll be in the top 15 very shortly.
That's a very good point there. So when I value things based on many different metrics, Sui is actually fairly valued now compared to Solana, which is good. But it all depends on exactly where the users go. And a very telling point we discussed last week, actually, CTO, you mentioned as well, that follow the developers. It's very important because that's a signal for where things are going to go. And Sui does not have near as many developers as I would have expected as one of their little Achilles heels right now. Unless, of course, it's super easy to build on that platform. That's the other factor.
And they're only just over a year old. Just understand, this is just a year-old project. It's quite amazing that it's done this time.
And what's stunning is these new projects, they are literally light years ahead of the Dino coins, and the Dino coins have massive market caps and do pretty much nothing. It just shows you that crypto people do not look at any fundamentals whatsoever.
Nothing.
Stunning.
They don't look at technology at all. They actually don't care. Yeah.
Well, maybe we'll bring one more thing to the Solana killer narrative, which is not my view, but it's definitely something that's been spoken about for the last month or so. Has been Hyperliquid. I don't know if you guys have been following this story, but Hype is the name of the ticker. Now, this is kind of it's an L1 which has been packaged up as a perp dex to begin with. Originally was on Arbitrum. It is it came as a $2 billion airdrop. Yeah, well, it's not the Soul Killer. It's a great name for this, but it came at about $2 billion FDV airdrop. It's since gone up to around $30 billion FDV. Is the current FDV of Hype. It's a perp dex. You can go onto it. It's probably the most popular perp dex out there right now. Which means you can do futures trading decentralized. You don't do it on Binance. You don't do it on any of these other sites. You can do it kind of similar to Jupiter, as Marty was saying, how he trades perps. But it's easily the number one in terms of volume. I mean, you're seeing huge volumes go through there every single day, and the billions go through there every single day. It is now been packaged up as an L1. It only has 4 validators. And there was some FUD even today about the fact that North Korea was on the platform and might be testing it out for a hack. But it's seen a massive increase in TVL. It's printing a crazy amount of fees. I think it's actually, if you count it as just in terms of fees, it's 4th for fees at the moment, behind Solana, Ethereum, Tron, and then Hyperliquid. It did 228 million of annualized fees, it looks like. So a huge amount. And it's only got a perp dex right now, but they're saying, this can start to be valued as an L1. Like, there are some other coins that have launched on Hyperliquid that you can trade. But it's been a lot of, I would say, smart people in the space's radars, because a lot of people got made very well from the airdrop that happened. It was obviously geared at a lot of very, very big traders in the space. And it's now amassed, like I said, it's gone up to around a $30 billion FDV. James, you've taken a look at this. A lot of people, and even Mert is not having to defend Solana against Hyperliquid right now. Like, he did a post 2 days ago, basically talking about the fact that everything is being spoken about as the Solana killer. This is why it's not. What's your take, James?
Yeah, well, there's first of all, it's very clear that it doesn't take a lot to spin up a layer 2, a layer 3, a new perp dex or whatever, but there's way more to a chain than just a perp dex, first of all. I did try and use Hyperliquid about 1 or 2 weeks ago. I didn't have a good experience. It wasn't as slick as some of the other stuff I'm used to using. They have a lack of established infrastructure, scalability, and performance. Yes, it says it can basically match what Solana does now, but remember, Solana is about to get much faster in the next 1 or 2 quarters with much of the stuff that's going on, not only just Double Zero, but also Fire Dancer, etc. So matching or equating to what another chain does is not good enough. Airdrops do drive a lot of adoption. It's been fueled heavily by a lot of marketing and promise. The community and developer network, however, is far, million times higher on Solana. And it's all about adoption. As I always say, too, that, the crypto is fickle. People go where the bees are, and then a week later, they're somewhere else. And it could just be one of those things. Is it a threat to Solana? No. It's not a true layer 1 blockchain. And it's just one of those things where people migrate over and then they'll use it, and then somebody else will brush up what they do and make something better. And that's the very interesting thing about the world we live in is, again, everything's going to change every 2 years. We don't know what the world's going to look like in 2 years. I mean, Bitcoin may not even be here. Solana may not even be here. But we need to be prepared for that change. That's important.
Yeah, look, I think actually I really like Hyperliquid. As a product, I think it's good. It's what the best. I mean, I haven't had a great experience with perp dexes. I always find them, the slippage is terrible, the fees are terrible. Hyperliquid at least has very good liquidity. As a perp dex, I think it's the best one I've actually I've traded on. At the same time, I think the talk of it being a Solana killer seems a bit much. Like, it doesn't have any dApps. It has 4 validators. It has high speed. But it's like I said, you can have easy this sort of FUD, which we kind of had today. They are doing a buyback and burn policy, and with the fees, that's quite attractive, right? It's burning, or at least buying back, I think $3 million like a day at the moment, given the huge amount of fees that are going through the perp dex. So I think looking at like a DeFi protocol is interesting, and maybe with an L1 attached. Rather than an L1 first and with a DeFi protocol. So I think it can actually go higher. I do. And I think I would be unsurprised if it could get up to like maybe even $40-50 billion FDV. But for it to challenge Solana, I think it's got a long way. Like you said, we've had a lot of perp dexes in the past. DYDX is its own chain, right? And that was a very big airdrop at the time, then faded away. Like, it's very easy to spin up a perp dex. There's also a lot of like potential regulatory FUD around perp dexes, but who knows? I don't think that's a big thing at this stage. But I do think pay attention to Hype. Hype is a token which is now trading at like 25. There's a lot of FUD exactly today because of North Korea, but potentially using the platform, and that could preempt some sort of an attack. But I do think it can go higher. Have you looked at it at all, Marty? I know you trade quite a lot of perps.
Yeah, I mean, 4 validators, so it's just decentralized. That's just like, I can make a 4 validator blockchain in 3 days. You know, the whole point of decentralization is to have validators all over different geographic locations on different services and create no single point of failure. Hyperliquid is literally the definition of a speculative single point of failure experiment. I mean, at any moment, one of those validators can be exploited and $200 billion can be lost. So just be very careful. Anybody trading the Hype coin, please don't expose too much to it. Put it in the speculative category, please. Hold it there until it's proven. It only has between 30 and 100,000 users, which is pretty good for it. It's accelerated pretty fast, but it's very new. It's just it's kind of like Say. Basically, there's some projects that make a very use case specific blockchain, and this is like Say, specialized towards a perp dex, a perp exchange. But at 4 validators, Binance's perp dex is more decentralized than Hype right now. So don't believe the hype, please. Anything called hype, just please don't put your entire life savings in it. Let's give it some time to mature. Let's see if they can get over 1 million users. Let's see if they can scale to over 100 validators, get some outside of other continents, get some valid proof, and give it some time to mature. But very interesting. I'm excited for it. Why not? I think it's great. I personally am not exposed to it. I think it's due for one heavy pullback, just based on technical analysis. It's been nothing but up pretty much to $35. I'd say expect a pullback to the $10 range. And there might be an interesting entry into your speculative basket. Expose a couple of $1,000 to $10. That sounds like a deal. But buying here is just silly. Go ahead.
I think that's what we spoke about before with some of the degenerate activity moving. It moved to Hype, because there's going to be more airdrops coming, obviously, so people are now trading on there. There's also they have their own smaller coins on there, like their own versions of Memecoins, basically, which people were buying. Solana lost a lot of that degen activity to Hype, I think. And there's been a lot of noise about it from that community. You know, like, oh, this is a Solana killer, hype to 100, all that sort of stuff. It's been like a one-way train, which has been very easy to do when Solana's not been trading that well. But I do think that will, not that I don't think hype won't go high. I just think that you'll see some of that normalize over the next few months.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
I
a
just
very,
look at
very high FTV.
I look at the Hyperliquid Explorer the other day, and I mean, they show the user genesis balances, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's like 5 wallets that control the entire stack. So, you know, if any one of those wallets is compromised, this whole thing disappears. So you'll lose all your money. Just be very careful. It's extremely risky. But to those that enjoy risk, it's a great candidate. I'd say it's better than a meme coin. It's way better than a meme coin. At this point, that's all I can say. At least it has a use case. There you go.
Well, one thing that we have seen in terms of the meme coin move, AI has been obviously took over from meme coins as the #1 narrative over the last couple of months. In terms of mindshare, at least, a lot of these AI coins were very, very strong, and that also has taken over with the use case of Solana. People have been talking about, you know, Solana's dead. Solana is hitting all-time highs for transactions. It's hitting all-time highs for users. It's smashing through DEX volumes. Like, it is. This isn't no one's using Solana thing. That's just not the story. A lot of that is still down to what's been going on in AI. I don't know if you saw 2 days ago, but there was some talk that AGI may have been achieved by OpenAI. I don't know if you guys saw that, but like some of the benchmarks for AGI were achieved. And we've seen a lot of that sort of AI narrative with things like, you've seen memes, you've seen different protocols. The 2 biggest on Solana at the moment, or the 3 biggest, I would say, are AI16Z, GOAT. There's actually a coin called Fartcoin. I don't know if you've heard about that, but that broke above $1 billion as an AI meme coin. But a lot of this activity is happening on Solana. You have a strong view on this, James? Is AI just going to be the thing that just takes us to the promised land? Like, it just feels as though that is going to be the underlying bid for crypto throughout this cycle to me.
Like, literally, this is since November 2022. I've been warning people, prepare. This is, for me, one of the biggest threats to the way we operate today. And as I've been pounding the table on, you know, prepare, skill up, position yourself, it is changing everything real fast. And we got 2 technologists here on the show. CTO, how alarmed are you about the pace of development of AI? And we got cars. I've got 2 AI cars right now. Literally, I don't drive anymore. It is absolutely incredible. And the people that criticize things like Tesla FSD don't even have a Tesla, never mind FSD. But it is staggering. CTO, AI.
Oh yeah, AI will disrupt everything and everyone much more than anyone can imagine, including ourselves here. And I've said it many times, and I think people start seeing it now with the pace of these new models being released and how spectacularly, you know, intelligent they are. Looking at what they can do compared to, you know, a dumb human, an intelligent human, Einstein level problem solving, and it's like a couple of months between these releases. And yeah, I think it will be a big part of the narrative for the next season, not only for crypto, but for the entire world, workplace, everything. So everyone's sitting there, you know, clinging on to their safe office job. I'm telling you guys, it's not safe. The safe office job isn't safe.
No.
So can as well take some risk.
The only thing we have to compete against inflation is AI and technology. It's the only thing that really is different in the world since the last 100 years is technology. And AI, I think, is at the pinnacle of technology together with blockchain. So thankfully, we have an administration that is very, you know, critical thinking around AI and technology. I think if we hadn't had this move to a younger Gen X administration with, you know, knowledge, know-how, and experience in these technologies and their ability to make things more efficient, we would have been in severe trouble because we're going to have the largest unemployment spiral I think we've ever seen. Look at Amazon. Amazon just went on strike. The longshoremen just went on strike. There's going to be strikes everywhere because jobs are being replaced. by AI. Now, what do we do about that? We can't just sit and wait for that to happen. We need radical, critical thinking now to plan. What are people going to do when their meaning of life, their job is taken away? Where will they find meaning? How will this affect society? We need extreme brains thinking about this. So thankfully, we put that into play with this Trump administration. So that's my thoughts for the day. AI absolutely will dominate everything, but it will also consume many human functions. And what will those people do? We don't know yet.
Yeah,
perhaps a renaissance.
I think it's all going to run on crypto as well, and we're seeing that already. Like I think even if interest from humans wanes in crypto, we're going to see interest from AI is only going to go parabolic from here.
Yep.
Finally, I think the thing only really to touch upon is Tesla. Oh,
sorry.
What have we got here? Well, yeah, we're going to talk about the miners a little bit. So, ton of different miners doing the strategy here. What do you make of this, James?
Yeah, the amount, I just want to put things in perspective. The amount of buying by treasuries is insane. We now have 60 companies actively snacking on Bitcoin. Some of them are very large. Saylor just bought again as well. And it's incredible. As we've said before here on this station, retail is not in the Bitcoin game. This is a treasury game too. So it's pretty staggering. And, looking at the NAV premiums too, many things are kind of close to fair value, but the action coming from players like Marathon, MicroStrategy, Hut 8, CleanSpark is now issuing ATM and stuff. It is bonkers. And then we've got companies in China, companies in Japan, companies in Australia, tons of companies in Canada buying like there's no tomorrow. And we have multiple companies as well that are not just doing Bitcoin treasuries, but also Solana treasuries and also SpaceX treasuries. It's crazy. So everybody's going short fiat, going long, hard, disruptive assets, which I think is fascinating. And you mentioned FSD. This is happening, and nobody can figure out exactly how priced in this is because it's not. We had a crazy breakout. Robotaxis are coming sooner than expected, and these cars now drive themselves. And all the legacy car makers are merging to try and survive. It's comical what's going on out there. Like you mix a dog with fleas with a dog with fleas with a dog with fleas. What are you going to get? A dog with fleas. That's Nissan, Mitsubishi, and what's the other company?
Oh, did you see Nissan and Honda announced a merger today?
Yeah, exactly. And now Mitsubishi want in too. Like three shit companies joining together. The result is going to be catastrophic. So
one thing I wanted to touch on as well, guys, is I always say when Binance gets passed by BlackRock as Bitcoin holder, which the difference right now is 128,000, which is the lowest ever. I think we're going to see a very staggeringly different Bitcoin chart. They're getting close. And MicroStrategy bought more today. They now have 444,262 in that third position. Very interesting.
Insane.
So we'll keep track of that.
All
right. Well, we've touched upon everything there, guys. Bitcoin, it did bounce on that kind of support level. It looks like we held on to that 92.5-ish area, back up to about 94 now. I expect some volatility over next week. Hopefully, hopefully you guys still get to enjoy your Christmases, enjoy your holidays.
One last point for the people out there, snag these dips. If you don't have any, you see the market makers dropping it down and rebounding $1,000 in 3 minutes. Okay. When you see Bitcoin going to 92K or 92.8, if you don't have any, DCA a little bit. It's going up, but just look at the buying and the scarcity. It is the only commodity on the planet that nobody can increase more of based on price. It's fixed. It's hard. And that's what's special. Thank you, Mando. Yeah. Great job.
Thanks, guys.
Good job, Mando.
Really appreciate appreciate your time this week. Are we doing a show next week? I think we are, right? So this will not be the final show of the year. Next week will be. Hopefully we're at a better place then.
Is anybody traveling on that day, or we need to move the day? We'll talk about that later. But
I will be available. I said previously I won't, but I will be available. I've sorted it out.
Awesome. Monday, it'll be the New Year's Eve special with New
Year's Eve special
with projections for 2025. So let's go. Thank you, team.
Yeah, we should do that.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
And
Binance is giving you a Christmas discount on crypto. Spot buy now. This is your time. Don't use high leverage. Please stop using high leverage. We'll see you next week.
Cheers, gang.
Bye, guys. All the best.
Thank you. Cheers. Bye.